much. Evan, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So, right behind you, so many people. It's your first developer conference. So the first question I have for you really is, what do you hope to convey when you have your keynote here in just a few minutes to the developers, especially because, as you know, they're a little bit concerned because of your recent acquisition. So what do you hope to convey?
Well, we're so excited because developers have always been such a big part of Twitter. So what this conference is really about is to give them more insight into the company, share a bunch of information that will help them succeed, and to really talk about how Twitter is evolving and how the new opportunities are opening up are very exciting. Have
you gotten, though, any feedback from the developers? Because you guys, and to explain to our audience, acquired a company that had an app for the phone, for the BlackBerry, the photo. So what has been, when you've talked to these developers and the big ones, what's been the response?
Well, there's been mixed reactions, but I think a lot of people understand that our goal is really to make Twitter much bigger, and that we all win if we can bring many more people into the fold. And that's what we're trying to do by creating new experiences that the new users can get on, and that there's going to be many more opportunities once we do that.
There was you spoke with the New York Times, and one of the things you said that you've made it very clear you're going to continue to buy and acquire companies that you need to fill the holes for Twitter. Would you consider taking on more investments to be able to do that?
If we need to, but we're also implementing our revenue strategy, as you know, and investment isn't something that we're needing right now. We're well funded and things are going great.
So when you look at kind of the cash that you have set aside to buy more, to be able to grow in that way versus organic growth, how much do you see, what percentage of that do you see maybe spending on other companies this year?
We don't have an amount earmarked for acquisitions. I think we evaluate on a case-by-case basis. Our team is also growing very quickly, so we can build more stuff on our own. But with acquisitions will be some part, but not a huge part of what we do.
Can you give us an outlook for the rest of the year as far as kind of what we would see for those acquisitions?
I don't think I can.
Maybe not specific companies, but an idea of how many perhaps y'all are looking at?
No.
Okay, I had to ask. No, thank you. Well, so here's a question for you, and let's kind of talk a little bit about the ad program, because you guys coming out with another way to make money. You already had the Google search and the kind of the search engine part. If we look at the pie of where you guys are going to be getting your revenue stream, what percentage would you say you expect to come from this new advertising platform versus the client corporate programs that you have and the search programs?
We expect the ad program to be the promoted tweets that we're launching, or we just launched this week, to certainly be the largest part in a few months, but it's going to take a while to ramp up. So it's really hard to predict these things. We know there's stuff we'll need to tweak. There's new ideas that we want to try down the road, but really it's our first significant scalable revenue plan that we're putting in place.
How many months in particular do you think it's going to take to be able to reach the point you guys want?
Well, it'll be ramping for years probably, but we look at Q4 as really being until then when it's reaching a scale.
And you're going to talk to us about it then, right?
Of course.
Margaret, do you have a question for Evan?
Well, just real quickly there, Evan, can you describe to us how you evaluate which developers and which products are sort of ancillary businesses and which one are services? Because we heard you were going to be acquiring Bitly. That was a rumor for a while, but that you might come up with your own way to make it easier for those to tweet.
Right. So our focus is really making Twitter easier for everybody. And so there's not a strict criteria, but there's lots of developers who are doing things that are very complementary to Twitter. We think that's the majority of them. And so it's sort of on a case-by-case basis.
Evan, right before the break, I had asked you in short, sort of, why buy Tweety and not a service like a URL shortener like Bitly? How do you decide that?
Well, it's a complicated equation. It depends on what the product offers, how hard the technology is to build, and what it really offers to users. Our goal with everything is how do we deliver more value to users more quickly. So sometimes that's an acquisition, and sometimes it's not. And sometimes, in the majority of cases, actually, it's better if something lives out in the ecosystem and it can evolve and people can innovate without us having to own it.
Without you even having to spend on the R&D, I would imagine. Talk to me a little bit about international. About 60% of your audience, I believe, is outside the United States. Today we heard Apple delaying its international launch of the iPad. How important is that international segment of the business for you? How do you make that profitable?
Well, the international is critical to us because our goal is to serve the world and to enable the open exchange of information. And most of the world is outside the United States. So by definition, we need to serve more of the world. About 20% of internet users are in the US, but only about 10% of mobile phone users are in the US. So by definition, we want to serve the entire world. Different parts of the world are harder or easier to monetize, but we think there's opportunities all over.
So would you consider acquisitions at an international level to be able to grow your base there and platforms there?
It's possible. We haven't really considered that now, and acquisitions aren't a core part of our strategy. We think we're growing very quickly internationally, mostly organically right now, and through some partnerships.
Also wanted to ask you, when we think of kind of outside of the U.S., for location-based services, it's the hottest thing. You know, you were at the South by Southwest. We talked about this. So, what do you see as far as location-based services and what that's going to mean for Twitter? I know you guys are kind of in it, but how do you see that expanding?
Location is critical. It's very exciting. People have been talking about location-based services for years, and now, thanks to the smartphones, it's actually becoming real. And there's just an explosion of innovation happening there. We think it's super important. We think it will influence all types of information consumption and creation, and we're building it in a platform our platform at a core level.
But are you perhaps talking with some of the big names out there like Foursquare and perhaps Gowalla as far as integrating services with them?
Absolutely. Yeah, Foursquare and Gowalla already work with Twitter. We're talking to both of them to figure out how to make it work better. We think those are very complementary services.
And when you talk to them, what kind of partnerships? I mean, how does that revenue stream go? Or is it just to scale and get people, or is there money to changing hands?
Right now, it's mostly about how do we make the products work better so that the overlapping user bases are better served. And we're both figuring out our business models, but the most important thing is how do we make the user experience great.
Last question here, and that is Google today announced that you can search through archived tweets. Was that is that something that they're paying you guys for? Or is that something you guys are getting revenue stream from?
It's part of our deal with Google, where we give them the fire hose, and we actually gave them the archive of all historical tweets. We're really excited about it because it's something we haven't been able to do with our capacity and our servers, and they're going to enable the ability to search the entire history of tweets to see when something was first mentioned, and this is the first time this has been available, so we're really excited about it.
And you're okay with giving up that control and letting them handle the search, even though your core function at the beginning was a search?
Well, our philosophy has always been to allow multiple people to innovate and add value to the system, so if it's something we can do and they can do, then people are better served.
Evan Williams, CEO of Twitter, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Have fun today.